The phrase in today's gospel that grabbed my attention was, redemption is drawing near. Redemption is drawing near. This is not a doom and gloom passage, as some might think. I certainly did when I first read it. And I don't think it's a time in our history when we want to be or should be focusing on doom and gloom. Focusing on where we go from here makes much more sense to me. Yet, let's not do this at the expense of how people are feeling these days. Remember, there are many different feelings happening right now in all of us. And feelings are real and they are legitimate to each person. Actions, depending on what they are all about, are sometimes not so legitimate, but feelings are legitimate. We need to be allowed to feel what we are feeling before we can move on, fully embracing those feelings. And then maybe we could be encouraged to see and feel the hope and the joy this passage is pointing us to. This is a passage about redemption. And talking about redemption in this time and in this place is what does make sense to me. What it comes down to so often is this. What do we have control over and what do we not have control over? And how can we make a difference in the world? This is where I encourage us to put our energy, never forgetting that God is a God of love, and Jesus is always teaching us and forming us into the image of God. We may want to concentrate on how this is going to happen, and we might want to concentrate on what might be our part in the transformation of ourselves and of the world. So yes, this is a passage about Jesus' second coming. That's how many of us know it. And yes, this is a warning to the Jewish people that their temple will be destroyed by the Romans. And of course, it is in 70 AD. And yes, people need to pay attention to what is happening in the world. And they need to pay attention to the state of their relationship with God and with creation. Jesus isn't telling this to us just to frighten us. Jesus is telling us this so that we will prepare. We'll prepare not just the people of his time, but the people of this time will be in preparation. Yet, I encourage us not to get too hung up, like so many do, on the catastrophic disaster this passage implies. When you look closely at the passage, there is actually little in this passage to be frightened of, and a great deal to be hopeful about. The coming of Jesus will bring redemption, and that redemption is about restoration, restoring the world to God's design. It's really about the birth of a new world. And the thought of this new world should bring us hope and joy. And if we're paying attention, there is no need for fear. No need for fear. I'll tell you a little bit about me as a child. I was a very fearful child. I thought deeply about everything. I was scared of most things. And when you're like this, it heightens your worry and it causes you to have fear responses and to not do things and try things. When you are a child, you haven't fully processed much of anything yet, and many answers still elude you. And because of all of that, it can be terrifying. I remember being overwhelmed at one point. I remember this so distinctly. When I thought of the world ending, for some reason that just struck terror in my heart. I told my mother that I was not afraid of death, my death, as much as I was afraid about the world ending. I couldn't imagine this, and I thought it to be the worst thing of all. If everything, the people, the planet, the animals, everything was gone and there was nothing left, that was terrifying. Nothingness and no potential for anything new was too much for my little brain to comprehend. Now, I know most kids don't have those kinds of conversations with their parents, but I did, especially with my mother. The good news is that Jesus is not talking about nothingness. Jesus isn't talking about nothingness. He is talking about the birth of a new world, the old world being restored to new life. And the time for that isn't that far away. It's close enough that we should, at all times and in all places, be aware, be alert. And that our awareness should affect our attitudes and our behavior right now. I want to talk about fear a little bit. Fear has this nasty way of manipulating us. We lose track of what is truly important when we are manipulated by fear. We get sidetracked to what is much less important. Jesus is actually not attempting to instill fear here as much as he is using hope and joy as tools for manipulating our understanding. He gets our attention and then he closes in on what is truly important for us to go forward. In life, sometimes we have to experience the turmoil and maybe even some destruction in life before we can see and live into the joy. And guess what? It's the hope. It's our hope that gets us there. We are entering into winter. I mean, really, literally this week, we entered into winter with our first snowfall. This can be depressing for some. Many of us end up housebound most of the winter, getting outside, taking in fresh air or the warmth of the sun. Those are not part of our days, most days, here in Michigan. Jesus uses the fig tree parable to help us understand that when signs of spring begin at the end of all the dark and claustrophobic times that we're in, we feel that hope and we feel that joy. The joy of those warm, sunny days that are coming soon. I love spring for just that reason. It is the beginning of something that is so delightful and lasts right on through summer and most of fall. And this year in particular, that was a long season to enjoy. I think what makes the onset of winter is what we just went through. What makes the onset of winter bearable is what we just went through, which is the holidays. When we have time, we spend time with family and friends. And then it's after this that we begin to get a little antsy, and we're really ready to see those signs of spring. I know for my husband, it's February 1, he needs to go south, and many of us do. God's redemptive nature and my strong belief and love of the whole concept of redemption are what continue to nourish my hope. And hope is what drives me forward, no matter what's going on in my life. The ultimate act of redemption was Jesus dying on the cross for us. That's the ultimate act of redemption. From 1 Corinthians, we have our redemption. We have our redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of our trespasses, according to the riches of his grace. So we remember this. Try hard not to forget this. We also pray, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So Jesus redeems us through his death, and we are redeemed also through God's grace. With this, we can continue the work of redemption in a world that sorely needs it. We have a choice to live and act in fear, or to live and act out of hope. We can manipulate the world using fear, because it is an effective tool. We all know that. It gets our attention, but it also causes worries, unfounded worries. It causes chaos, it causes numbness. We sort of shut down. It causes distraction, and it even causes unnecessary and unrealistic anger. Or we can use the tools of hope and joy to redeem the world to God's design. It's a choice. It's our choice, our personal choice in how we act and how we engage with the world. And that is because we have a God of grace, a God of grace who gives us choices. Now, maybe sometimes we don't want choices, but we have choices. Maybe we want to be told what to do at times, but I wouldn't want that, and I don't think any of you would either. We have a God also. We have a God who teaches us, protects us, employs us, uses us, shows us truth, and who offers us great grace at every corner, on every corner of life's journey. That's what we got to keep remembering. That's what we can't forget. The good news is that redemption is drawing near. We have all been redeemed through Jesus' death on the cross. Now it's time to look toward more and continual redemption for all humanity, for all creation, for the entire planet. It is time for our part in this plan to come to fruition. It is time for us not only to envision this, but to take part in the creation of this new world. It is time for us to set aside our fear, trust God, and know that God does this for us. So we hope, right? That's where we begin. We hope, we envision. Down the road we will find joy. This God of ours is ever creating, and we are ever evolving. I love that. I love that whole idea that God continues to create and we continue to be created. So I choose to take part. Advent is a time of preparation. That's what I'm going to be spending my time doing. But what do you choose? I think it's time for us all to sort of think on that, meditate on that, give it some thought. And if we choose to take part, then the question is, how, during this season, will we prepare? Amen.